I wasn't supposed to be there. The plan was simple, just a quiet weekend getaway with my boyfriend, Ethan. A break from the noise, the deadlines, the constant pressure of pretending everything in my life was perfectly aligned. We chose a remote mountain route, the kind people describe as peaceful, but forget to mention how isolating it can feel when things go wrong. And things did go wrong. The sky turned without warning. One moment, it was a soft gray haze. The next, it was chaos. Rain slammed against the windshield so hard it felt like the car might shatter. The wind howled like something alive, something angry. I remember gripping the seat, my heart racing, while Ethan tried to act calm like he always did. "It's just a storm," he said, forcing a smile. But it didn't feel like just a storm. The road twisted endlessly, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. Then, the car jerked. A horrible grinding sound followed. And, just like that, we were stranded. No signal. No nearby houses. Just forest and the storm. Panic settled in my chest, thick and suffocating. Ethan stepped out, trying to inspect the damage, but the rain soaked him within seconds. I stayed inside, hugging myself, watching the world blur through the glass. That's when I saw it. A faint light in the distance. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But it flickered again, steady, warm, real. "There," I said, pointing. "There's something." Ethan hesitated, but we didn't have a choice. We grabbed what we could and stepped into the storm, fighting against the wind as we made our way toward that light. Every step felt heavier than the last, my shoes slipping in the mud, my breath uneven. And then, we reached it. A cabin. Small. Wooden. Almost hidden between the trees. But the light inside glowed like safety, like something out of a dream. Ethan knocked. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened. And standing there was her. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment everything in my life began to change. She was unlike anyone I'd ever seen. Tall, with hair that caught the firelight in soft copper tones, and eyes that seemed to see straight through me. There was a calm confidence in her presence, the kind that didn't demand attention but made you notice anyway. She didn't smile immediately, just studied us, as if deciding whether we were worth letting in. "Storm's bad," she said finally, her voice low, steady, warm. "Come in. You'll catch your death out there." Ethan, ever polite but clearly uncomfortable, muttered a thank you and stepped inside. I followed, shivering, my wet coat dripping onto her wooden floor. The cabin smelled of pine and something else, something comforting, like old books and wood smoke. She introduced herself as Mara. Short, simple, one name, like she didn't need more. Her presence filled the small space. There was an effortless ease in the way she moved, as if the cabin itself responded to her touch. She offered towels, blankets, even hot tea, and I felt a strange warmth just watching her. Ethan immediately began talking about the storm, the car, how long we'd been driving. I nodded along, but I wasn't really listening. I couldn't take my eyes off Mara. There was something magnetic in the way she carried herself, in the quiet authority that didn't feel threatening, just real. And then, without meaning to, I laughed at one of her subtle jokes. And it wasn't just a polite laugh, it was the first real laugh I'd had in months. Ethan noticed, and I felt a flicker of guilt. I loved him, or at least I thought I did, but there was something in the way Mara's smile lingered, something I hadn't expected. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, the world felt suspended. Time slowed. The tension between us, between me and Ethan, felt almost tangible. I caught Mara glancing at me once, briefly, and I swear the air shifted in that moment. Something unspoken passed between us, something electric, something I couldn't name, yet. By the time the fire crackled and our soaked clothes began to dry, I knew one thing with sudden, terrifying clarity. I was no longer just a girlfriend in a storm. I was on the edge of something else. Something forbidden. Something irresistible. The storm showed no sign of letting up, and the cabin became our refuge. Ethan tried to take control. He suggested board games, awkward small talk, anything to pass the time, but Mara barely glanced at him. She focused on me, offering tea with a careful smile, asking questions that felt personal in a way no one had asked in years. I caught myself leaning in closer than necessary, drawn to her warmth, her calm, the way she listened without judgment. Each time our hands brushed, I felt a jolt I didn't understand. My heart, which I thought belonged entirely to Ethan, began betraying me. Ethan noticed my distraction. I could see it in his eyes, the first hint of suspicion. I tried to push it down, tried to convince myself it was just gratitude, just the stress of the storm. But when Mara laughed at something I said, that full, genuine, effortless laugh, it felt like someone had pulled a thread in me, unraveling everything I thought I knew. Dinner was quiet. Ethan made a few awkward jokes, trying to lighten the mood, but Mara responded only to me, her gaze lingering longer than it should have. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, not from the fire, but from the way she looked at me, as if she could see the parts of me I'd been hiding, even from myself. Later, I found myself alone with Mara by the fire, Ethan gone to check on the car, or at least, that's what he said. We sat in silence at first, the storm outside hammering the roof, wind rattling the windows. And then she spoke, soft and hesitant. "You're not like him," she said. "You've got this, something." A spark. My throat went dry. My chest tightened. I couldn't deny it, couldn't hide it. Every instinct screamed at me to step back, to respect boundaries, to remember Ethan waiting just down the hall. But another part of me, the part I'd ignored for years, leaned in, captivated. I looked into Mara's eyes and, in that instant, felt something dangerous, thrilling, and utterly irresistible. It was a connection I'd never known I was capable of, a pull so strong it left me breathless. And as the storm raged outside, I realized that nothing would ever feel the same again. The fire had burned low when Mara suddenly moved closer. I couldn't explain why I didn't pull away. Every part of me wanted to. Her presence was overwhelming, magnetic, like gravity I couldn't resist. I could hear Ethan's footsteps outside, faint against the storm, and yet it felt like the cabin existed only for the two of us. "Why do you look so torn?" Mara asked softly. Her voice wasn't accusatory, just curious, gentle. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I don't know. I've never felt this way before," I admitted, barely above a whisper. She smiled, but it wasn't smug or teasing, it was knowing, understanding. "It's okay. Some things you can't control." Her words hit me like a thunderclap. Every moment with her felt electric. Every glance, every touch, even the faintest brush of her hand as she handed me the blanket, sent shivers down my spine. And the more I tried to deny it, the more I realized I couldn't. I wasn't just drawn to her, I was falling. Mara leaned closer, and I could smell the faint scent of pine and smoke on her. It was intoxicating. Her eyes locked with mine, and for a moment, the storm outside didn't exist. The world was narrowed down to her face, her hand resting near mine, the warmth of her so close I could feel it through the thin fabric of my sweater. "I shouldn't." I began, but she placed a finger gently against my lips. "Don't think," she whispered. "Just feel." And I did. I felt every unspoken word, every suppressed desire, every heartbeat that was suddenly racing faster than it should. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Ethan existed, my boyfriend, my safe choice, but he was fading into irrelevance with every passing second. By the time the night ended, I knew I'd crossed a line. There was no turning back. And the storm outside, relentless and unforgiving, mirrored perfectly the storm that had awakened inside me. When I woke the next morning, the storm had passed. Sunlight streamed weakly through the cabin's small windows, painting the wooden walls with gold. Everything looked calm, peaceful, even innocent. But inside me, nothing was calm. Ethan was still asleep, oblivious to the storm that had raged between me and Mara the night before. I lay there, heart hammering, replaying every glance, every touch, every word. Guilt pressed against me like a weight, but so did something else, longing. The memory of Mara's presence lingered, a constant ache that refused to fade. I got up quietly, careful not to wake Ethan, and made my way to the small kitchen. Mara was already there, humming softly as she poured coffee. Her hair caught the morning light and she looked radiant. Simple, natural, mesmerizing. "Morning," she said, glancing up at me. Her smile was small but full of warmth. "Morning," I replied, my voice barely steady. She studied me for a moment, tilting her head slightly. "You're thinking about last night." I nodded, unable to deny it. "I can't stop." Mara didn't say anything. She just poured a second cup of coffee and handed it to me. Our fingers brushed, and I felt that same electric pull I'd felt the night before. Ethan woke shortly after, cheerful, oblivious, and eager to head out. He talked about breakfast, the route home, the car, the storm's aftermath. I smiled, nodded, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Mara. I caught her eyes across the room, and in that silent exchange, something unspoken passed between us, something I couldn't ignore. By the time we were ready to leave, I realized the truth. The storm hadn't just trapped us in a cabin, it had trapped me in a moment of awakening. A moment I couldn't forget. I had crossed a line with Mara, and there was no going back. My heart was no longer entirely mine to give to Ethan. And as we stepped out into the damp, fresh air, I knew something inside me had shifted forever. The world felt different. Colors were brighter. Sounds were sharper. And deep down, I knew I was falling not for him, not for the boyfriend I thought I loved, but for her. The drive back was quiet. Ethan chattered about the storm, the scenic route, how grateful he was for the cabin's warmth. I nodded along, but my mind wasn't on the conversation. It was on Mara. Every memory of her lingered like fire in my veins, the way she looked at me, the calm authority, the spark that had ignited a part of me I didn't know existed. By the time we reached the nearest town, I realized I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't go back to the life I had before, not fully. Not when Mara had awakened something inside me that couldn't be ignored. "I need to tell you something," I said finally, voice tight with fear and anticipation. Ethan turned to me, hopeful, smiling, and I felt a pang of guilt. "What is it?" I paused, searching for words. "I met someone. Someone who made me realize I'm not the person I thought I was. And I can't ignore it." The silence that followed was heavy. Ethan's face fell, confusion and hurt mingling there. But I couldn't take it back. Not one word. I knew then that I had a choice. Stay in the comfortable, familiar life with Ethan, or step into the unknown with Mara, the woman who had stirred my heart and soul. The decision wasn't easy. But deep inside, I knew the truth. Love isn't about what's safe. It's about what sets your soul on fire. I took a deep breath and made my choice. I couldn't go back to pretending. I couldn't ignore the pull, the connection, the undeniable truth. My heart belonged somewhere new, somewhere thrilling, somewhere terrifyingly real. As I packed my bag and prepared to reach out to Mara, I felt a rush of fear and exhilaration. The storm had brought me here, and now it was time to embrace the whirlwind inside me. The storm had ended, but my story was only just beginning. And for the first time in my life, I felt alive. Fully, completely, and without regret.